Hi, everyone. My name is Angela Tolosky, President here at Reading-Berks Association of Realtors. With me today is Brittany and also John, our AE and Government Affairs Director.
Hey,
The
everyone.
three of us together, yeah, you want to say hello?
Hi.
Three of us together thought we would go through a Q&A and try to answer as many questions as possible. We have a list of questions that we're going to interact together, and one will ask a question, one of us will answer. We're going to try to hit as many topics as what we've seen that seem to be the key questions that everyone is asking. And so what we'll do at the end, we are recording this, we're going to upload it, and then if you have questions, you can interact and send questions to us, and we can try to continue to answer more questions at a future time. So, all right, let's get started.
Yeah, I'll ask the
So,
first one to you, Angela. So are real estate businesses required to close under the governor's order as of March 19th?
as you said, Governor Wolf issued an order that all non-essential, non-life, all non-life sustaining businesses in the state must shut down to slow the spread of COVID-19. So to comply with the governor's closure order, realtors must not perform in-person real estate services and should only offer services that can be done remotely without being physically present. So I think that pretty much covers that we are not to be conducting in-service in-home.
Absolutely. I think too, I want to add, we're updating our RBAR website. So if you want to see the list of businesses that are considered non-life sustaining versus life sustaining, go to the RBAR website. We have a coronavirus hub that we actually put new information on pretty regularly now. So head on over there if you have questions about that.
Yeah, and the link to that hub will be included in the description of this video when it gets uploaded.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so next question. Can I still show homes to individual clients?
So the main thrust of the governor's order is to minimize physical interaction as much as possible. And the latest guidance refers to suspending all in-person physical operations of affected businesses. So in-person showings involve several people gathering together in an offsite location, which is exactly the sort of behavior currently being discouraged. So the answer to the homes to individual clients, no. The answer is no.
Yep.
Okay.
Virtually, there are options available. And we've even seen some agents get really innovative with working with their sellers, the owners of the property, the listed property, to actually do a seller guided tour of the property, which I thought was a really great example of how to do that. And the realtor doesn't even have to be there. You can help market that video and distribute, but you don't have to be there to get that virtual tour experience.
Question for you, Angela. So let's say you know realtors have a sort of fiduciary responsibility to work in the best interests of their clients. So if you have a seller or a buyer who's demanding that you're arranging showings despite this governor's order, what sort of is there any sort of legal or contractual obligation to abide by that?
So, while it's true that a contracted buyer or seller has a fiduciary responsibility to work in the best interest of their clients, a client does not have any authority to dictate actions that may be illegal or unsafe. So as far as if we're demanded to do showings, no, we do not have to do that, because now we are basically taking things that are unsafe to the public, their own safety for that matter, that they might not realize. And I do want to say, I think it's a good idea to pass along the information that we are all sharing with each other on Facebook and through email in regards to just having safe practices And actually we can, even share with them, what has been given to us from PAR with what we're not allowed to be doing, what we're not supposed to be doing, and how to help to flatten the curve.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's the governor
And
said,
hopefully that will help the customer understand.
right. I mean, the governor says that this is in the best interest of everyone. So by abiding by this order, you are, helping them to preserve their best interest. So, I mean, that's
Yeah.
where you're at with that. I mean, hopefully your clients will be understanding for the time period. We're all kind of dealing with this, and hopefully they'll be understanding, and we'll find new ways to kind of help them through this as they're looking for property or trying to sell their house.
Yeah.
So next question, what is a virtual showing or open house? And is it okay for an agent to visit a property to take pictures or stream video walkthroughs?
So no, that is not okay either. Realtors must not perform any in-person real estate services and should only offer services that can be done remotely without being physically present. And I know we've talked about that before. And so well, let me just continue to say that, a virtual showing that complies with this order can be accomplished by the use of existing photographs or videos, by the seller taking videos for the purpose, or by the seller themselves facilitating a live video walkthrough of the property. And we can assist them with that. We can explain to them how to do it. We can do just a crash course run with them, and do a test run so that they can understand better. And that way we can help them with, showing the room in its best light, what angles to take, what things to talk about. And hopefully that would help them to feel that they're involved, but that we're still involved too, and we're still engaging and getting the listing done. I will tell you, I've had some agents ask me about that and say, well, why do they need us then? If they're doing some of the initial work, our sellers, they might think that they don't need us then, and they can list their home themselves. And we have to keep in mind all the other pieces of the puzzle, the other aspects that we are doing for them. That is such a small portion of getting the house sold. And so keeping in mind that, hey, here are all the steps to selling your house, Mr. Seller. Here are all the steps that we're helping with the buyer to make sure, and the buyer agent, that they're getting their pieces done to get the house to closing. So that is such a small piece that I think that we need to just take the focus off of the initial listing step.
Definitely. Okay, so our next question, what if I just go to the property and, we're just hearing so many questions from realtors and from agents across the board who are just trying to find ways that they can kind of get around the governor's order and maybe just find alternatives, or, things that could be considered okay, or, interpreted a certain way. So what do you say to those agents who are just saying, well, what if I just go to the property and
Open the door, for example, or do a video for them? Yes, I know. Or what about pre-settlement walkthroughs? And I'm getting those questions too. My answer to that is, if you go to a place outside of your home, outside of your home to provide real estate services, you are by definition engaging in in-person physical operation. And that is what we're not supposed to be doing. All of those things are in-person physical operations that we're not supposed to be doing. So for the real estate business, and not providing services remotely or virtually. Remember, I think that's the key. Remotely and virtually, I think, is the key to all of this, to keep us kind of understanding what we're not to be doing. It doesn't matter what the service or whether anyone else is there. The governor's closure order says you can't do it. Simple as that.
So I'm guessing you have the same answer in terms of, what about vacant properties?
Yeah.
Exactly. No, everything's exactly the same. I just said vacant properties at this point at this point are under the same premise if the house has someone living there. It's the same thing. There is no change. You can't, go to the house even though it's vacant. So at this point, it's the same answer. If you go, once again, if you go to a place outside of your home, if you go in person, if you physically go there, then now you're going against the governor's order, and you are not keeping yourself or your customers safe.
Okay. So what happens when your broker says you can't do any business, any in-person services for clients, but as an independent contractor, I mean, can your broker actually do that?
So we are all independent contractors, and I understand that. And you guys know I'm a broker, so I definitely have a broker opinion on this, probably more so. But even as a licensee, so we are under their guidance. We are working for their company. When an agent signs to be licensed with them and you send it into the state, now as brokers, we're responsible for them. And now many offices have their own office policy as well. So they should look at their office policy, reread it, and understand if there is something already in place stating that they're supposed to take full guidance from them, and whatever the broker says goes. Because remember, the liability lies on not only the licensee, the realtor, but also lies on the broker. So anything that the licensee does, the broker is an extension of that. And so, which is why we have E&O insurance to cover for some of these things. And, I don't know how some of the E&O carriers would look if we are ignoring things that are not safe to the public. So I would definitely encourage a licensee, if they're thinking that they're not going to listen to their broker, to read over their office policy, to look at their broker independent contractor form, and understand that they are not a sole entity and cannot make decisions solely on their own.
Okay.
So.
Hey, John, this is a quick question for you. Can we do remote closings in Pennsylvania?
So it is, let me pull that up real quick. So the biggest hang up with remote closings right now is specifically around notarizing signatures. So Pennsylvania law does allow for an electronic notary stamp, but it doesn't allow for notarization where you're actually, the person signing is not actually physically present.
Okay.
Earlier this morning, which is Friday, March 27th, since everything seems to be changing by the hour, we did get word that the governor has issued an executive order to temporarily allow for remote electronic notarization in the state of PA. This applies for all commercial transactions, and it only applies to residential transactions that were in progress before this emergency began. Now, my understanding is that this order goes into effect immediately, but it's still going to take a little bit of time before your lenders, your title companies do everything they need to do, including applying for the e-notary certificate, getting the software they need, and changing whatever internal policies they need to change to actually allow for this. So hopefully that happens soon. But what I would say is just be constantly in contact with your lenders and your title company to ask them about it, see what they're doing, and see how they're handling this whole situation.
Okay. If a transaction can be completed in compliance with the governor's closure order, should I be advising clients to do the closing? Angela, what do you think?
So each transaction will have to be addressed, I think, on its own terms, depending what's been transpiring and where they're at with things. There may be various reasons why they should not do so. I think that you should definitely discuss all the issues and options with your client. That way then you can look over details before you make any decisions and move forward. And you should advise them to speak with their own personal attorney if they have concerns, especially if there are things that are outside of real estate that you should be answering. So they should definitely advise their attorney as well if they think that there are other problems or concerns that they have. For example, if they would choose not to do a final walkthrough because of what's been going on here, or not have you present for the final walkthrough, how to, gain access to the house, and if they would be able, or if the agent and the customer would be able to see if you could have the house just unlocked by the seller to let the buyer walk through for a final walkthrough for closing, And then, of course, as far as closing goes, they do have the option too to talk to the title company. And these title companies, as John was just talking about, that they're going to be going to changing how they do the notaries. But right now, most title companies I'm seeing are allowing them to come and meet without anyone else there and just taking safety precautions to do that. So those are all things that they should look at, and it should just be on a case-by-case basis.
But our realtors aren't usually there at the moment. We're advising our realtors not to go, for the settlement in person or anything like that.
No, you shouldn't be in the room on, the day of settlement.
Yep.
And you shouldn't be there at all. That's an in-person activity. And I realize it, and even I myself, I had a closing this week. I was not present for the closing. I had long conversations prior with my customer about the closing and how things were going to transpire. I forwarded emails onto them from the title company about what changes they were making to conduct the closing. I still made sure that I reviewed the ALTA. I still made sure that everything was on the settlement sheet that was correct. I still had conversations with the lender. That way then, I at least still had my hand in it. I at least still was representing my client, but I was not physically there. I stayed home. One more thing we have not talked about is the new thing that's going on is wiring funds. That is the other little trick around this, because as a listing office, a lot of times you would have a physical check and the agent would bring that physical check to closing with their file. Well, now that agents are not allowed to attend closings and should not be doing any in-person activity, I am seeing an influx of wires being taking place. Now, having said that, each agent should check with their broker if there are fees with that. Like my bank charges an outgoing fee for escrow checks of $30. And then I had to set up to get the commission checks wired in to our account. Well, that's $15. So those kind of things have to be talked about and figured out who's paying that, and whether or not the agent's paying that, the customer's paying that, how they are handling these additional expenses that usually were not taking place prior. It was always in an actual printed check in most cases. So.
Okay. So our next question, can brokers take new listings while this order is in effect?
Okay, I'm sorry. So now can brokers take new listings? Okay, so the best advice, that I would give is to have a detailed conversation with your potential customer. So yes, you can, and if you read over, and we just sent another copy out of it yesterday, if you read over what PAR, the FAQs, and what's been set forth, you can still take listings. It's just that you can't do any of the in-person activities to go with them. So everything has to be done virtual. And so some of these things have already been kind of, have been set in place. I think most realtors are used to sending contracts electronically and are able to conduct their business virtually. You can do Zoom presentations with your customer to go over your CMA with them, to talk about your marketing that you're going to do. I will say though, you should ask them, you should talk to them about if it's a good time to list, because everyone's trying to keep getting listings. I see listings still popping up in Bright every day. The question is now the best time for your customer? I think we're on the tail end of the country with just starting to get this. I don't think if you watch the news, is it a good time to list? Because we're seeing an influx, I'm sure you guys are too, of the unemployment rates going up. Mm-hmm. So what about when that hits here? And what about, we're going to come across customers that are going to be losing their jobs. I can't see any way around that. I don't have any at this point, but I would be very surprised if Berks County or surrounding counties are going to be able to keep ourselves shielded from the things happening in the United States. So at some point, we're going to get some of this, and there are going to probably be some customers that cannot get approved for a mortgage. So is now a good time is the question, or is it maybe better to wait until we get past this first wave and there could potentially be a second wave of this virus? Are we better off waiting it out and giving our customers the strongest opportunity to list? And that's something each individual agent and their customers are going to have to discuss. So.
Okay. Hey, John, this question's for you. As independent contractors, do realtors qualify for any state or federal benefits? And if so, if they are unable to work?
That's a really good question. So when it comes to relief packages, the U.S. Senate passed a $2 trillion $2 trillion relief bill that was, I think it was apparently passed in the House literally just a few minutes ago, and the president has indicated that he will sign it. Some of the components of the bill that we actually succeeded in getting is 350. Oh, my internet. Do you guys hear me?
Yep.
All good? Okay. Is 350 billion for small business loans. So let's say you have an office and you have less than 500 employees, which I think would be pretty much all of our members. You can get up to 10 million towards covering like your mortgage interest or your rent and your utilities and payroll costs for that office. And a portion of those loans will be forgivable. In terms of unemployment insurance, to circle back to your question, Brittany, there was a big expansion to now cover people who are self-employed and independent contractors for up to 39 weeks. So yes, in a lot of cases, let's say if you cannot work and you are an independent contractor, my understanding of the federal relief bill is that you could actually get, unemployment insurance and compensation that way. There's also I still think I haven't seen the exact numbers on how it is calculated, but it's up to $1,200 for most adults, depending on income, as a one-time payment, and then $500 for each dependent. And again, that's dependent on income. If you make more, you might see less than that, $1,200. But yeah, they're NAR and our state association, we're still working on getting whatever sort of relief we can for realtors who are unable to work right now.
Great. John, another question for you. What has PAR done in terms of the waiver application for allowing real estate businesses or realtors to continue operating or doing business as they have been? The waiver application process, I know, is a little bit confusing for some people, but I know PAR did submit a waiver, correct?
Yep, and we are, as far as I know, we're still waiting to hear back from it. We did file a request more than a week ago. More than a week ago now. The changes to the guidance last Friday changed not much for real estate. That was on March 20th. And then, so PAR, we're still waiting on a response to the waiver. We are exhausting pretty much every contact we have to try to get more information and to get some sort of allowance for the industry. I will say, however, that doesn't mean that you as a business shouldn't be applying for a waiver yourself. In many instances, individual brokerages have gotten responses much sooner than PAR has. In pretty much almost every instance that has been, as far as a business-wide waiver, they have not gotten approved for it in all but one instance that I know of. But what you might have more success with is asking for waivers for specific transactions, particularly if you're in a situation where someone in that transaction is going to be facing some sort of homelessness or housing insecurity if that transaction doesn't happen. The last thing anyone wants is for people to be in a situation where you might be looking at having to move in with your parents or something like that when you're trying to be socially distant and quarantine. The other is, does your transaction involve someone who is in one of those life-sustaining industries, and are they moving for work-related reasons? If you apply for waivers for individual transactions and any of those situations apply to that, I would highly recommend including that information if you do make a request.
Yep. And John, we're including the link to the waiver application on our own website, correct?
Yes. So when you go on to the main part of the on the RBAR COVID-19 site, the first question with a link is, how do I ask for a waiver, and how do I actually, or should I apply for one, and how do I ask for one? Right on that page is the link under the first question to click to answer or to access that online form.
Right. So we don't know whether or not you'll be approved if you decide that, as a broker, you would like to apply for a waiver, but, the option and the resource is there if you choose to take that route.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the other questions that we've gotten, will the MLS be adjusting their rules and policies to account for the market disruption this is causing? So I've been in communication with Bright pretty frequently lately. They are having weekly calls right now. It's brand new information to me, but there's a lot of things that Bright is looking at doing to kind of provide more flexibility. One of those things is the virtual tours and showings for active listings. So Bright right now has relaxed its rules requiring in-person or on-site showings for active and under contract listings. So what is a virtual showing? Right now, we're not really supposed to be doing virtual tours, because that would involve maybe a photographer coming out to a property and, kind of filming a tour that way. We're not really even supposed to be, photographers are under the same kind of order that we are, so no in-person contact. You're supposed to be working from home, doing things virtually. However, a seller could use audio or visual technology, i.e., FaceTime or Skype, to conduct real-time interactive or directed showing of the property. A virtual tour or a virtual showing allows for interaction between the real estate professional and the buyer, and may require the real estate professional to be physically present in the property being shown. Now, for the virtual showings and virtual tours, you can actually upload the URL in the remarks field, and that will actually be allowable now through Bright in terms of their flexibility. So make sure that any unbranded virtual tours may be included in the public remarks. These videos may be housed on public sites like YouTube or Vimeo, where brokerage information is present in the channel and or remarks. However, the video itself should include no brokerage or agent branding. The URL for a virtual tour or a virtual showing that includes broker or agent information may be included in the agent remarks only. So please, if you have questions about what Bright is doing, they did introduce the Bright Steps campaign, and part of that is the flexibility for virtual showings, virtual tours. If you have more questions about that, please head to their website, and we'll make sure we get all of this information, or at least the link to the Bright Steps campaign information on our own RBAR website, so that you can kind of head there and keep keep an eye on what updates are coming from Bright. But as I mentioned, I'm doing weekly conference calls with Bright, and I really appreciate the feedback that I'm getting from our members on tips and maybe some suggestions that I can take to Bright to look at for temporary allow for temporary flexibility for you guys. Right now, showing time is not going to eliminate the ability to do showings. That's going to be on the responsibility for our brokers and our agents to take that very seriously. Obviously, Bright is in other states. Other states don't necessarily have the order that the governor, our governor, has kind of issued at this moment. So it's up to us to kind of take that responsibility on ourselves and limit our in-person interaction and activity. So kind of, just keep trying to do everything virtually and remotely, and hopefully this won't last very, too much longer, but it's really up to us to kind of make sure we're following that order. John, do you just want to explain anything else about, I think there was an update on the Real Estate Commission in terms of license renewal?
Yes. So actually a lot of important dates and deadlines from the state government have been changed. The primary, for example, was pushed back to June 2nd. But so from the State Real Estate Commission, if you need to get your license renewed, the deadline for renewal and for taking your CEs has been changed to August 29th. So I think with a lot of, pretty much all in-person classes being canceled, people being unable to take your take the CEs, that'll be definitely helpful for a few people. I don't believe that this applies to if you are a new salesperson, or if you're trying to, you're a broker candidate and you're trying to complete your education and take the broker exam. All of those classes have been canceled and postponed. And then the PSI testing centers are also closed until at least April 13th. So even if you've completed all of the education for that, you still can't take the exam at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I know we are really trying to make sure we educate our members on online availability for CE courses through COLI. Even, NIR has some really good courses and webinars available for realtors right now while you're working remotely. So, Angela, what are some of the things that you're doing as a broker now that you're kind of working remotely, working from home? What are you doing day to day?
So I've had Zoom meetings with all of my agents just because they're used to seeing me in the office, and now can't conduct sales meetings there. My office, of course, is closed. My staff is working from home. So at this point, I've kept my staff on because we are still busy. At first, I didn't know if that was going to happen, but because of the closings that were still able to take place, there are still activities that we can do by phone and virtually. So I'm doing the Zoom meetings. All of the PAR updates that you guys are doing, I've been putting on our closed group page. So I have a closed group page for my agents. And I think some of the other real estate offices might too. It's a good idea to be able to keep them well informed. It was interesting, after my last Zoom meeting, I had a lot of questions. So I was answering questions, fielding things directly with each agent. And I'm trying to keep them in the loop as we go. Personally, some other things I've been doing, my own things, is, like I said, any closings I have, I'm not attending. I'm not going to any in-person meetings. Everything that I'm doing is virtual, is online. I do have a listing coming, which we're holding off now. The customers decided to hold off on this next listing I was getting to just wait and see what happens here, and because they want to maximize the number of buyers that come to the house too, and they want a strong buyer. They don't want a buyer they have to be concerned about could lose their job midway through a transaction. And of course, with some of the other issues that come along with, can you do inspections? That house is vacant.
Yeah.
It's interesting, real quick on that one. I have a customer, it was friend of the family, single woman who just, wasn't sure if she had everything up to date, with cleaning, heating systems and just servicing things. So I suggested to her that why don't you get someone out to do a pre-inspection? Now that was before all this happened, and she did. She had a company come out and do a pre-inspection, and that was helpful because now I already have an inspection report to provide to an upcoming, buyer. Now there were a couple things that had to be done as far as cleaning the heating system and so forth, and central air needed to be serviced. But so that was one thing we did before all this happened, and had the house clean. And wait and see what happens here with the coronavirus. So, but other ones that are listing are just this, we are recommending that we can help the seller just to list virtually, and we'll help them through. And everything else is the same. We can still upload it in the MLS. We can still interact with other agents on the phone. We can still do Zoom meetings. And also we can offer, like you were saying earlier, to Skype in the buyer agent, the listing agent, and the buyer and seller if they want to do a Skype to walk through the house. Here to keep everything moving.
So just, for everybody's benefit, I really think that PAR is really doing a great job in trying to keep all of us as informed as possible, and they're putting out updates and information around the clock, which is greatly appreciated at the local level. We're all trying to make sure our members locally are in the know. So we'll continue at our bar with staff and leadership team to kind of keep everybody up to date on everything. But if you guys have any more individual questions that you'd like, Angela or the board or PAR to even kind of take a look at and give some guidance on, send those out to myself or, to John or what have you, and we'll try and get those answered as best as we can.
Sounds good. And one more thing, and we'll do this again. Maybe we'll try to keep updating, maybe another week, and see what happens here in the next week, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Everything seems to be changing by the hour, even now. What more than a week into this.
Okay.
So, and then locally, I just wanted to give a little bit of an update on what we're working on with local municipalities. And it's basically just been trying to keep everything running so that nothing at the municipal or the county level affects your transaction. In Chester County, for example, the recorder's office stopped all e-recording services. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen here. We've also seen issues in other areas with rental permits. What if you have a rental property and your municipality requires a permit and you need to get it renewed and you can't? And making sure that municipalities have a plan in place to allow for an extension just automatically. And as well as, I know not a lot of municipalities do require UNO inspections, but for those that do, I've been told that they should still be able to go out and do those municipal inspections because code enforcement was classified by the governor as a life-sustaining government service. So what I've been told at this time is you just need to make sure that nobody is in the property at least for a few hours prior to that happening. So us at our bar, PAR and NAR, we're doing everything we can around the clock to advocate for you guys and to try to help you guys through this as best as possible, whether that's getting any sort of leniency from the government through the governor's orders, and trying to keep the lights on in all our municipalities, so that way if you do get to the point where you can close, nothing from local governments or from any other requirements like that is going to be the final roadblock for you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for all of your time and effort on this. Keep us updated and keep us, with your feedback. Keep sending that feedback to us because we really appreciate it. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks, guys.
Right. Have a good one.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.